Okay, so this is part two of the nervous system series, and last time I think we were on the gray matter H that you find in the spinal in the middle of the spinal cord. So let's just review that. So right here, so in the whoops, so in the middle of the H is something called the gray commissure, and that's the crossbar. So if you take a look at the gray at this gray matter area right here. So right here would be the gray commissure. So, um, and then after that, there's the ventral horns. Those contain the somata motor neurons, and it's the lower portion of the H. So right here, somata of motor neurons are over here. Whoops, wrong. So then after that, there are the dorsal horns, which are the upper part of the H, and they contain inner neurons that synapse with sensory neurons. So upper part right here, and then after that, there are the lateral horns, which are projections in the ventral horns, and these are only seen in the thoracic and lumbar regions of the vertebral column. And these house cell bodies from the sympathetic nervous system. So you see right here, these are the lateral horns right here. So these are like little projections. So now let's talk about the central canal. So the central canal is a very small hole in the gray commissure. So you can see it like right there. And that's where cerebrospinal fluid goes after the fourth ventricle. It can also go into the subarachnoid space. However, it can also go there. Anyway, so then after that, there are white columns or funiculi, and these refer to 6 areas of white matter, and three per each side of the H. And let me think a moment. Yeah, they refer to three per each side of the H, and they are the anterior or ventral columns, the posterior or dorsal columns, and the lateral columns as well. Then after that, there are fasciculi, which are basically like bundles of nerve tracts, and these are in white columns containing neurons with similar functions or destinations. And ascending, there are two types. There's ascending. Um, Ascending tracts are sensory, transmit sensory information from various parts of the body to the brain. And then after that, descending motor tracts transmit nerve impulses from the brain to muscles or glands, whatever. Um, so yeah, we saw this earlier. So to just take a moment to look at this picture, see what we talked about. Then after that, there are here's the spinal cord again. So there's the cervical plexus right here. A plexus is just like a web of interwoven nerves. The brachial plexus from here. Then there's the thoracic nerves, and there's also the cervical enlargement right here. It's basically just like you see this the spinal cord. It just gets bigger right here. And after that, there's posterior median sulcus. That's basically the line dividing the spinal cord. And there's also anterior or ventral median sulcus. So then after that, here's the lumbar enlargement. There's also another enlargement right there. Then there's the conus medullaris. So from here, that's the end of the spinal cord, pretty much. The rest of it is just nerves that just go out laterally. So right here would be the lumbar plexus. It would be, once again, a plexus is a bundle of interwoven nerves. And then after that, here's the sacral plexus right there. And you can't see it, but right here is the filum terminal. It just holds everything in place, inferiorly at least. So now, continuing on with the spinal cord, let's talk about spinal nerves. There are 31 of them. You don't have to memorize them for now, since this is high school. Um, the path of the spinal cord is path of a nerve, not the spinal cord, but path of a nerve as the path of a nerve as it emerges from the spinal column is this. So it emerges from 2 points, the ventral and dorsal roots, and these merge and form spinal. These merge and form the spinal nerve. And then after that, they leave via the intervertebral foramen. So it's basically just like a hole through a vertebra, except for the first nerve. That's because it's the atlas axis area. Then after that, there's but besides that, it goes outside to the vertebral column, and where it divides into these branches: the dorsal ramus, the ventral ramus, and the meningeal branch. So the dorsal ramus contains nerves that serve the dorsal portion. The ventral ramus serves the ventral portion. So serve the remaining ventral parts of the trunk and upper and lower limbs. And then after that, there's the meningeal branch, which re-enters the vertebral column and serves the meninges and blood vessels within. And then after that, there's the rami communicantes. There shouldn't have been an arrow right there, but it contains autonomic nerves for viscera. But the meningeal branch, as I said before, it just re-enters the vertebral column and it innervates some blood vessels and meninges. And then after that, there are also dermatomes to talk about, and those are basically just sensory nerves in skin. If they sense, that's pretty much it. Sensory nerves in skin. So I just wanted to show you these pictures again. So now, reflexes. So a reflex is basically an involuntary response to stimuli. Most of these are spinal. There are some that are cranial, but even though they are cranial, it's the spinal cord that integrates the sensory info, the info. So the parts of the reflex are the receptor, and that detects the stimulus, the sensory neuron, how shall I say, the sensory neuron that sends impulse to the spinal cord. Then there's the integration center. So it can involve monosynaptic or polysynaptic reflex arcs. Monosynaptic means that it just contains one interneuron, but polysynaptic means it contains many interneurons. Monosynaptic usually, just a little note, monosynaptic reflex arcs don't usually happen in the brain. Then after that, there's the motor neuron, the impulse effector. These, once again, can be called afferent or efferent. Then after that, there's the effector neuron, or effector organ, and it can be somatic or autonomic, but it's the organ that the reflex affects. So there are two types of reflexes. There's stretch reflexes. So muscle spindles, those are basically receptors in muscles. They detect a change in your muscle length, and an unintended change, and they contract it back to the normal body position. So then there's the flexor reflex, and those are responses to pain. So let's say you put your hand on a burning stove, your hand's going to move out of the way. It's going to contract back, and that's what a flexor reflex is. So let's take a look at when we're learning reflexes. The most common one to learn that everyone knows is called the myotatic or patellar reflex. So it's more commonly known to everyone as the knee jerk reflex. So this is a monosynaptic reflex, just to let you know. So steps 1 through 3 are that you tap the patellar tendon, the muscle stretches, and the signal goes to the spinal cord. So steps 4 through 5 are that the impulse goes across a synapse, and it travels via the efferent nerve to the muscle. And then after that, step 6 through 7 is the muscle contracts, and then the lower legs extends. So let's take a look at this picture. So first, step 1, you tap the patellar tendon, and then after that, step 2, the muscle stretches, so you can, because that's the tendon, right? If you pull it a little bit, pull the muscle a little bit. So the muscle stretches a little bit. Step 3, the signal goes to the spinal cord via the afferent nerve, or the sensory nerve. And then after that, the impulse goes across the synapse where the inner neuron would be. Then after that, the inner neuron sends the signal to the efferent nerve, and the impulse travels via the efferent nerve to the muscle. And then after that, step 6 is contraction. And then step 7 is the lower leg extends. So, thank you for watching, and I hope you liked it, and I'll see you next episode.